Most difficulties in life do not come from events themselves, but from how quickly the mind reacts to them. A word is spoken, a situation shifts, or an emotion rises, and the response happens almost instantly, before understanding has a chance to appear. These reactions feel natural, yet they are often learned habits repeated without awareness. At that speed, clarity is lost, and unnecessary suffering begins. Buddhism teaches that there is another possibility. Between what happens and how we respond, there is a small but powerful space. When this space is noticed, the mind is no longer controlled by impulse. Awareness steps in, choice becomes possible, and freedom begins to grow. This reflection explores what unfolds when reaction slows, when awareness takes its place, and when life begins to change from within. Reaction often feels natural, immediate, and unquestionable. When something happens, the mind responds so quickly that it seems as if the reaction is simply who we are. Anger appears, and we believe we are angry. Fear arises, and we believe we are fearful. Yet Buddhism teaches that what feels natural is often just familiar. Reactions are not true. It is a habit. From an early age, the mind learns how to respond to the world. Experiences shape patterns. Certain tones of voice trigger defensiveness. Certain situations trigger anxiety. Certain words trigger emotional responses. Over time, these responses repeat themselves so often that they begin to feel automatic. The mind no longer pauses to examine them. It reacts before awareness arrives. Because reactions happen quickly, they are easily mistaken for identity. The mind says, "This is just how I am," or "This is my personality." Buddhism gently challenges this assumption. It teaches that reactions are not fixed qualities. They are conditioned responses, shaped by past experiences, memories, and emotional habits. What is conditioned can be observed. What can be observed does not have to be obeyed. When reaction is not questioned, it controls behavior. The same patterns repeat again and again, creating predictable outcomes. The mind believes it is responding to the present moment, but in reality, it is responding to the past. Old experiences silently influence current reactions, even when circumstances have changed. This is why similar conflicts and emotions often appear in different situations. Seeing a reaction clearly is the beginning of freedom. When awareness notices a reaction as it arises, something important changes. The reaction is no longer invisible. It is seen as a process rather than a command. This seeing creates distance. Instead of being pulled into the reaction, awareness stands slightly apart from it. Buddhism does not ask you to judge reactions or push them away. It asks you to understand them. When you understand that a reaction is a habit, not a truth, its authority weakens. You no longer feel compelled to act on it immediately. The reaction may still arise, but it no longer defines you. This understanding brings relief. You realize that you are not your anger, your fear, or your impatience. These are movements of the mind, not statements about who you are. When identification drops, choice appears. You gain the ability to respond differently, not through force, but through clarity. As reactions are observed rather than followed, they begin to lose strength. Habits weaken when they are no longer fed. The mind learns that it does not need to react in the same way every time. New responses become possible. Calm replaces urgency. Understanding replaces impulse. Recognizing that reaction is habit, not truth, changes how you relate to yourself. Instead of criticizing or blaming yourself for reactions, you begin to observe them with curiosity. This curiosity creates space for patience and growth. Change becomes gentle rather than forced. In Buddhism, this shift is essential. Freedom does not come from eliminating reactions, but from no longer being ruled by them. When reaction is seen clearly, identification dissolves. What remains is awareness, steady, present, and capable of choice. Reaction often feels like a form of protection. When something feels uncomfortable or threatening, the mind reacts quickly, believing this response will defend against harm. Anger rises to protect dignity. Fear appears to avoid danger. Worry emerges to prevent mistakes. Yet Buddhism teaches that these reactions rarely bring the safety the mind expects. Instead, they quietly strengthen suffering. Each unexamined reaction reinforces the very cycle that created it. When anger is expressed without awareness, it does not dissolve. It lingers. It colors perception and makes the next moment easier to react to in the same way. Fear works similarly. When fear controls behavior, the mind becomes more sensitive to future threats, even when none are present. Reaction feeds itself. The mind mistakes reaction for resolution. It believes that expressing emotion will release it. In reality, reacting without awareness often deepens the emotional pattern. Words spoken in anger create regret. Actions driven by fear limit freedom. Thoughts fueled by anxiety multiply. What began as a single moment of discomfort expands into prolonged suffering. Buddhism explains that suffering is maintained through this repetition. The mind reacts, feels justified, and repeats the same behavior the next time a similar situation arises. Over time, this pattern becomes familiar. Suffering becomes predictable, yet difficult to escape because the mind keeps responding in the same way. Reaction also narrows perception. When emotion takes control, the mind loses its ability to see clearly. Situations appear more threatening than they are. People seem more hostile, the body tightens, and the breath becomes shallow. In this state, choices are limited. The mind believes it must react even when reaction causes harm. Non-reaction interrupts this cycle. It does not deny emotion or pretend discomfort is absent. Instead, it removes the fuel that keeps suffering alive. When reaction is paused, the emotion is allowed to rise and fall without being reinforced. Without action or mental commentary, the emotion loses momentum. This pause weakens old patterns. Anger, when not acted upon, fades more quickly. Fear, when observed rather than obeyed, loses authority. The mind learns that it can experience discomfort without being controlled by it. This learning gradually reduces suffering. Non-reaction also restores clarity. When the mind does not immediately react, perception widens. More options become visible. Responses become thoughtful rather than impulsive. This clarity prevents additional suffering from being created on top of the original experience. Buddhism teaches that freedom from suffering does not come from changing the world, but from changing how the mind responds to it. By removing the habit of reaction, the cycle of suffering weakens. What remains is awareness, which can meet experience without adding pain. This practice changes the relationship with difficulty. Challenges still arise, but they no longer dominate the inner world. The mind becomes steadier. Suffering lessens, not because life is perfect, but because reaction no longer feeds it. When the reaction pauses, something subtle but powerful happens. A small space opens between what is felt and what is done. This space may seem brief, but within it lies a deep shift in how the mind relates to experience. Instead of being pushed forward by impulse, awareness steps in. Buddhism teaches that this space is where clarity and wisdom naturally arise. Most reactions happen so quickly that there appears to be no gap at all. A feeling arises, and action follows immediately. The mind believes there is no alternative, yet when attention slows even slightly, the sequence is revealed. First, there is sensation, then there is emotion, then there is the urge to act. When this process is seen clearly, the mind is no longer trapped inside it. This space does not require effort to create. It appears naturally when reaction is not followed automatically. The moment awareness notices what is happening, impulse loses its urgency. You no longer feel compelled to respond instantly. The mind gains room to breathe. Within this space, clarity becomes possible. You begin to see the situation as it is, not as emotion frames it. Thoughts settle. The body relaxes. The breath deepens. From this steadiness, understanding replaces confusion. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Buddhism teaches that wisdom does not arrive through thinking more, but through seeing more clearly. This seeing requires space. Without space, the mind is crowded by impulse. With space, the mind becomes open and receptive. Insight appears naturally when reaction is not driving behavior. Non-reaction also changes how emotions are experienced. When an emotion is not acted upon immediately, it reveals its temporary nature. Feelings rise, peak, and fade. Observing this process builds trust in awareness. The mind learns that it can feel deeply without being controlled. This space allows choice. When reaction is automatic, choice is absent. Behavior follows habit. When space appears, choice becomes available. You can speak or remain silent. You can act or wait. You can respond with care instead of impulse. This choice is not forced. It arises naturally from clarity. This space grows more familiar. The mind learns that it does not need to react to every stimulus. Calm replaces urgency. Presence replaces tension. Life feels less pressured and more spacious. Buddhism points to this space as the ground of wisdom. It is not something added to the mind. It is revealed when unnecessary movement stops. In this space, understanding deepens and suffering weakens. Non-reaction does not make life passive. It makes life intentional. Actions arise from awareness rather than habit. When space becomes part of daily experience, everything changes not because life becomes easier, but because the mind becomes freer. Non-reaction is often misunderstood. Many assume that not reacting means pushing emotions away, becoming numb, or pretending that nothing is felt. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Non-reaction is not denial. It is in full presence without being controlled. Emotions are not rejected or silenced. They are allowed to arise and pass without being turned into action or identity. Suppression happens when the mind refuses to feel what is present. Emotions are judged as wrong, weak, or unacceptable, and they are pushed down. This creates tension. What is suppressed does not disappear. It remains beneath the surface and often returns with greater intensity. Buddhism does not encourage this kind of control. It encourages understanding. Non-reaction allows emotion to be fully experienced. When anger arises, it is felt in the body. When fear appears, it is noticed clearly. When sadness comes, it is acknowledged without resistance. The difference is that these emotions are not immediately acted upon. They are not given authority over speech or behavior. Awareness observes instead of obeying. This approach creates freedom. Emotion is no longer an enemy to fight or a force to submit to. It becomes a temporary experience moving through awareness. When emotion is met in this way, it often softens on its own. Without resistance or expression, it has nothing to push against and nothing to feed on. Awareness replaces control. Instead of trying to manage or fix emotions, the mind watches them with patience. This watching is not cold or distant, it is attentive and kind. The mind learns that it can stay present with discomfort without being overwhelmed. This trust in awareness reduces fear of emotion itself. Emotion moves freely when it is allowed without interference. Like a wave, it rises and falls naturally. When the mind interferes by suppressing or reacting, the wave crashes harder. When the mind allows, the wave passes. This natural movement prevents emotion from becoming destructive. Non-reaction also protects relationships. When emotions are expressed impulsively, words and actions often cause harm that cannot be undone. When emotions are suppressed, resentment builds silently. Non-reaction creates a middle path. Feelings are respected, but they do not dictate behavior. Responses come from clarity rather than impulse. This practice changes the relationship with emotion entirely. Fear loses its power. Anger becomes less convincing. Sadness feels softer and more manageable. The mind no longer treats emotion as a threat. It sees it as information, not instruction. Buddhism teaches that peace does not come from eliminating emotion. It comes from understanding it. When awareness is strong, emotion can exist without control. This balance allows you to feel fully while remaining steady. Non-reaction is not a weakness. It is emotional maturity. It is the ability to remain present without being driven. When emotion moves freely without becoming destructive, the mind becomes calm, clear, and grounded. This is the freedom that non-reaction offers. When the reaction ends, the mind begins to see clearly. Confusion often does not come from situations themselves, but from the emotional fog created by impulse. When the mind reacts instantly, perception becomes distorted. Emotions color everything. Small issues appear large, neutral words feel like attacks, and ordinary challenges feel overwhelming. Buddhism teaches that this confusion is not reality. It is the result of reacting too quickly. When reaction pauses, perception sharpens. Situations are no longer filtered through anger, fear, or urgency. They are seen more accurately, just as they are. This clarity does not make life easier in a superficial way, but it makes it more honest. You begin to understand what is actually happening rather than what emotion suggests is happening. Clarity changes decision-making. When the mind is reactive, decisions are rushed. Choices are made to escape discomfort, prove a point, or gain immediate relief. These decisions often lead to regret because they are not aligned with long-term understanding. When the reaction ends, the mind slows down. Decisions become calmer, more balanced, and more thoughtful. You begin to act from awareness rather than impulse. Words also change. Reaction fills speech with excess. Too much is said, or the wrong things are said at the wrong time. Later, regret follows. When clarity replaces reaction, words become fewer and more intentional. Silence becomes comfortable. When speech does arise, it carries less harm and more precision. This alone changes relationships deeply. Clarity also reveals options that were previously invisible. When emotion dominates, the mind believes there are only two choices: react or suppress. With clarity, a wider range of responses appears. You may choose to wait, to listen, or to do nothing at all. These options create flexibility, and flexibility reduces suffering. As clarity grows, regret decreases. Regret often comes from actions taken without awareness. When actions arise from clarity, even difficult outcomes are easier to accept. The mind knows it acted wisely, given the moment. This self-trust reduces inner conflict and strengthens peace. Buddhism teaches that clarity is not something added to the mind. It is revealed when unnecessary movement stops. Reaction clouds perception, non-reaction clears it. When clarity is present, life feels less chaotic, even when circumstances are challenging. This clarity changes how life unfolds over time. Patterns of conflict weaken. Relationships feel more stable. The mind becomes less reactive and more responsive. Life no longer feels like something that happens to you. It becomes something you meet with understanding. When confusion fades, simplicity remains. You see what matters and what does not. Energy is no longer wasted on unnecessary struggle. This clarity is quiet, but it is powerful. It reshapes daily life from within, allowing you to move through the world with steadiness, insight, and ease. Many people associate strength with control, dominance, or the ability to influence others and situations. Strength is often measured by how loudly someone can assert themselves, how forcefully they can react, or how much authority they appear to hold. Buddhism offers a very different understanding. It teaches that true strength is not outward control, but inner stability. It is the ability to remain steady within yourself while circumstances around you continue to change. Outer control is fragile. It depends on conditions cooperating. When things go according to plan, control feels possible. When they do not, frustration and fear arise. Inner stability, on the other hand, does not rely on circumstances. It remains present whether situations are pleasant or difficult. This is why Buddhism considers it a deeper and more reliable form of strength. Mastery of the mind is central to this teaching. A mind that reacts instantly is easily shaken. It is pulled in many directions by emotion, opinion, and impulse. Each reaction weakens stability because it gives power to whatever triggered it. When the mind is reactive, peace is always dependent on what happens next. Non-reaction builds inner stability by removing this dependence. When the mind does not react automatically, it stays rooted. Emotions may rise, but they do not knock the mind off balance. Thoughts may appear, but they do not dictate behavior. This steadiness allows you to remain present even when situations are uncertain or uncomfortable. Remaining steady does not mean becoming passive or detached from life. It means responding from clarity rather than impulse. A stable mind can act decisively when needed, but its actions are guided by understanding, not emotional urgency. This kind of response carries quiet confidence rather than force. Inner stability also brings resilience. Life inevitably brings change, loss, and challenge. When strength is based on control, these changes feel threatening. When strength is based on stability, change becomes manageable. You may still feel emotion, but you are not overwhelmed by it. The mind bends without breaking. Buddhism teaches that stability grows through practice, not suppression. Each moment of non-reaction strengthens the mind's ability to remain centered. Each pause reinforces balance. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural. Calm becomes the default rather than the exception. This form of strength is often invisible to others. It does not seek recognition, yet it profoundly shapes how life is experienced. Conflicts lose intensity. stress decreases, decisions feel grounded. The mind no longer needs to prove its strength because it feels secure within itself. True strength allows compassion to arise. When the mind is stable, it does not need to defend itself constantly. It can listen without becoming defensive and understand without feeling threatened. This openness deepens connection and reduces conflict. Buddhism points to inner stability as a form of freedom. When the mind is steady, it is no longer controlled by external events. Peace becomes internal rather than conditional. This is real power, not the power to control the world, but the power to remain unmoved by it. Non-reaction is the path to this strength. By choosing steadiness over impulse, the mind becomes anchored. In this anchoring, strength reveals itself quietly, consistently, and deeply. Non-reaction is not something that appears suddenly or perfectly. It is not a special ability reserved for a few people. Buddhism teaches that non-reaction is a skill that grows through daily practice. Like any habit of the mind, it develops gradually through repetition. Small moments of awareness, practiced consistently, reshape how the mind responds to life. Most reactions happen because there is no pause. A stimulus appears, and the mind moves immediately. Training non-reaction begins by creating a small gap. This gap does not need to be long. It may be a single breath before speaking, a moment of noticing tension in the body, or a brief recognition of emotion as it arises. These pauses may seem insignificant, yet they are powerful. A breath before responding changes everything. The breath anchors awareness in the present moment. It slows the mind just enough to interrupt impulse. In this slowing, the urge to react weakens. You are no longer carried forward by habit alone. Awareness steps in, and choice becomes possible. Awareness before action is another key aspect of training. Before words are spoken or decisions are made, attention turns inward. What is happening in the body? What emotion is present? What thought is driving the urge to act? This awareness does not judge, it observes. Observation reduces the grip of impulse. Each pause weakens old habits. Habits survive on speed and repetition. When speed is reduced, habits lose strength. The mind learns that it does not need to follow the same pattern every time. Over time, reactions that once felt unavoidable begin to feel optional. This training is gentle. Buddhism does not encourage forcing the mind into stillness or perfection. Missed pauses are not failures. They are reminders to begin again. Each moment offers another opportunity to practice. Consistency matters more than intensity. As non-reaction is practiced daily, calm begins to appear naturally. Calm is no longer something you try to create. It becomes a natural state the mind returns to. Tension decreases, urgency fades. The mind feels more spacious and steady. Daily life becomes the training ground. Conversations, challenges, and decisions all offer chances to practice non-reaction. There is no need for special conditions. Ordinary moments provide everything required for growth. The mind changes. What once triggered immediate reaction now meets awareness. Emotional waves rise and fall without causing disruption. The mind becomes familiar with stillness and trusts it. Buddhism teaches that freedom is built slowly. Each small pause contributes to this freedom. Each moment of awareness strengthens inner stability. Through daily practice, non-reaction becomes less effortful and more natural. Calm is not imposed. It emerges. Non-reaction is no longer something you do. It becomes part of who you are. When you stop reacting, life does not become silent or distant. It becomes clear and steady. The world continues to move, emotions continue to arise, and situations continue to change. Yet the mind no longer needs to be pushed by every impulse. In this steadiness, peace becomes less fragile and more dependable. Non-reaction is not about control or withdrawal. It is about understanding. Each pause, each moment of awareness, strengthens your ability to remain present without being overwhelmed. Over time, this quiet practice reshapes the way you meet life. Carry this understanding gently forward. Let reactions soften, let awareness lead, and allow calm to grow naturally. When the mind learns how to remain still within movement, everything truly begins to change.